Okay. I'm about ready to go. Let me close that door. Okay. Now let's see. Okay. My audio meter is working, so I have voice, which I didn't have last week, or not last week, the other day. Which is boy, doing these streams, these live casts are. I'm still learning it. So I have to fess up to that. But it's going to get smoother. It's going to get better. Just it's a learning process, and so I hope you're patient with me. Anyway, I'm going to be talking about what I was talking about before my previous video, but the sound didn't work. Not one syllable was recorded, so that wonderful podcast went nowhere. So I'm going to be I'm doing this one now. I'm a little late today, getting it started. Had some things I need to take care of. Which should be no excuse. I still should be starting at 9 o'clock sharp. I will try and do that as best I can. Anyway, we're talking about the Second Amendment and Trump and MAGA and how that's all going to work out. And right now, it doesn't look good for Trump, to be honest. The thing is that if you look at MAGA on one hand, and you look at the Second Amendment people on the other hand, for the most part, I believe there's almost a one-to-one correlation. If you're a MAGA person, you support the Second Amendment as interpreted by the Supreme Court for the past couple of decades, where it's interpreting it as basically nobody can regulate or control guns at all in this country. We're at the mercy of Colton and the other manufacturers. I don't know if that's entirely true. It wasn't for most of the history of the United States. That's not how the Second Amendment was interpreted in most of the history. It was only in the last few decades where the right wing has gotten control of the Supreme Court and forced that rather extreme interpretation. You see, in the Constitution, we have a number of rights being put forth, and it's always been interpreted as there being a balance of rights. No one right, has total, complete domination. Even like take freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is pretty broad in the United States, broader here in the United States than it is almost anywhere else in the world. Yet even that has limitations. Hence, there's this thing about the don't yell fire in a crowded theater, and which by the way, that came from the Iroquois Theater fire in Chicago, and back in 1890 or something like that. But also, I cannot slander somebody. That's I'm speaking. Why can't I just simply say what I want about somebody? Well, because it could be slander, and that could land you in court, in civil court or even in extreme cases in criminal court. So we have a balance of rights, but not when it comes to the Second Amendment, it seems. But anyway, we have this politically, we have the MAGA group very pro-gun. Okay, that's where they are. That's where they feel. Okay, that's fine. And Trump has allied themselves with this group, and they've come to identify themselves with Trump. So Trump and the MAGA group are now tied at the hip, so to speak. But then he sends the ICE goons into Minnesota, and they kill some people. One woman, Renee Nicole Good, she was just shot in the face. The guy who did the shooting was an ICE agent, and he had the gun in one hand, and then he had his camera in the other hand, and filming her while he's shooting her. That's a snuff film. That is what's called a snuff film, and they're illegal. But he does that, and then they put that up on the internet. Putting a snuff film up on the internet by itself, that is also illegal. But, what's laws? What's Constitution? Now when it comes to Trump and ICE, their laws and Constitution, those are just, we don't bother with that stuff anymore. It's or so it seems. But anyway, and then they take Alex Pretty, and they didn't really kill him. They disarmed him. He did have a gun. They disarmed him, shoved him to the ground, immobilized him, got on top of him, and then 2 ICE agents executed him. That's an execution, not merely a murder. That's an execution to do it like that. Why was he executed? And of course, what's interesting is that the ICE agent that did it, he's still on the force and he's still doing his job. No problem. Well, why? Well, that's because the Constitution and laws they don't apply to ICE. Okay, they can do whatever they want, and they are doing whatever they want. Nothing's holding them back. But what's interesting is that when there's a bit of when people object a little bit to this, people in Minneapolis somehow have a problem with getting shot and killed for no reason. The Kristi Noem and Vino and Trump, Miller, they all come out and they say, walk around with a gun. That's not acceptable. So all of a sudden they're saying that guns should be taken away from people. Guns should not be allowed in public, and people shouldn't have guns or wear guns. They're totally going against what their base holds very dear. By the way, let's talk about the MAGA base a little bit. Just one little thing. I want to put it in context. This, the MAGA base being anti-federal government, being very pro-gun, this has a very deep history in the United States. It goes all the way back to the Whiskey Rebellion in the 1700s. So there's a long history of people being distrustful of the federal government and feeling they need to have guns to protect themselves from the federal government. Not just from each other. There is an argument for having guns for self-protection. That's not what the people who really support the Second Amendment are all about. They're talking about needing guns to protect themselves from the government. Why? Because they actually had to do that back in the 1790s with the Whiskey Rebellion. Maybe I'll have a discussion about the Whiskey Rebellion one of these days. It's an interesting war, internal war that helped form the United States, and it helped form one of the folkways of the United States. And but anyway, so this idea, these feelings, these beliefs, these attitudes, they go way back to the founding of the country. So the MAGA people are not just some recent development. The name is new. The name of the MAGA, the name is new, but the ideas are not new. What they believe in is not new. It goes way back. And but but now Trump is saying things that it is. Now Trump is saying things that are basically attacking or rejecting his base. Normally, when politicians do that, it doesn't work well for them, for obvious reasons. For obvious reasons. And so where that's going to happen, whether that's going to go, who knows? But if he keeps this up, people are often very forgiving. One politician does one slip up, they'll let that slide. Two slip ups, okay, they'll let that slide. But if he does it for a long period of time, if he does it multiple times, and Trump has this history of not backing down on things, of keeping on. So if he keeps on with this rhetoric about guns and how people and how Alex Preddy, shouldn't have had one, and even though he had it legally, and and he dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's, then if he keeps on doing that and attacking these victims of ICE, and and it's now 10 months to the election, a little less than 10 months. That's not gonna, that probably won't go well. I don't think it will. I think that the MAGA base is going to start become somewhat confused, having what they call cognitive dissonance, and pulling back. Now that can exhibit itself in several ways. The immediate and most obvious thing is where they just don't go out to vote. They lose their motivation. Okay, so they don't get out to vote. Later on, it can go worse than that. Now they might think about actually switching to the other side. That requires a bit more. That's a big emotional step for them, for anyone actually, to switch sides. It's just there's something deep down in the gut that happens to people when they feel they're switching sides. Even when it's just something simple like switching sides, switching baseball teams when you're a kid playing and you're switching to the other side. It feels it feels momentous. It feels important, significant, and for a child just changing baseball teams or changing basketball teams. So changing political parties, changing who you vote for, changing political identity. Youch, that's deep. It's very deep for a lot of people. They don't take it lightly. And I think for the MAGA people, they hold it even more dear than most. So if that block begins to crack, then I think the Republican Party's in for a really bad time in November, which is going to happen anyway. Anyway, let's talk a little more about the Second Amendment and where that is. A lot of people talk about it, but few people really actually know what it says and know what it's about. So let's take a look at it. Here we have the Second Amendment. Let me read it to you. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Whoa. Boy, is that ambiguous. First of all, the third word is regulated. Right there, regulated. So you'd think this would mean that it's assuming that arms can be regulated. In arms, by the way, that means anything, any kind of weapon. It would be guns, it could be knives, it could be cannons, it could be military aircraft, whatever. It's anything that could be considered an arm. Now, so you think this would be well regulated. Now, but here's this word militia. What is militia? Well, militia is not what it isn't. It is not the federal army. It's not the national army. It's not what is managed outside, using the Pentagon and the officers at the Pentagon. No, this is the militia. These are government organized military groups. It's like the state militia, but like if you go back to the Revolutionary War, you heard about the Minutemen in Massachusetts. The Minutemen were militia, and they weren't of the state of Massachusetts wasn't a state, it was a colony, but it wasn't even the colony of Massachusetts. These were from the towns around. So like Concord would have its Minutemen, and Lexington would have its Minutemen, and so forth. So these towns would have their own militias. Now, a militia is not just simply a guy with a gun. These were people that were under the authority of that town or whatever the governmental unit was, a state or a county or whatever, and so they were under control, and they had to follow orders. So if they were told to go someplace, they should go someplace. If they were told to stay home and put their gun up, they had to stay home, put their gun up, not use it. So the militia would be able to say, okay, these are the guns we use, these are the guns we allow. These are how to use one. You got to train. You got to come down to the town square and show us you know how to use a gun and that kind of stuff, and make sure you could march and show you could be in a unit, et cetera, et cetera. So there was control, and that was what was meant by well regulated. But then there's this last phrase: the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, the key words there are the people. And because it could have said the right of people to keep and bear arms. But no, it says the right of the people to keep and bear arms. The people is referring to people in the collective. Now, the question then is, what collective? Are we talking about the people of a state, the people of the country, the people of a city? What collective of people are we talking about? Now, the way this has been interpreted for many years is that well-regulated militia meant that, okay, that was saying that local groups could regulate guns, and the right of the people to bear arms shall not be infringed. And the interpretation of there was that the federal government was the governmental organization that was being constrained from regulating or from restricting rights to bear arms. So for years, a state could have a license to have a gun. They could put requirements on, like you had to pass a test, you had to show your proficiency in the use of the weapon. You had to show that you could store it properly, you handled it properly, and that if you pointed, and also you had to use it properly. If you pointed it at people, pointed a loaded gun at people for no reason, that was considered to be that alone was considered to be a form of assault, and a person could be dealt with for that. But if you dealt with a gun in an irresponsible way, like you kept your gun on your in the dining room table loaded, and and you had small children in your house. Once upon a time, that would get you in trouble. Now, no, because there's no regulation. Because the federal government or the Supreme Court has now said that even states can't have laws, and towns and counties that can't have laws to infringe the use of guns. And that is and that's in my opinion, that's a big problem. I believe that guns should be regulated, and they must be regulated. They are dangerous things. So a person, before they're allowed to have a gun, they should show proficiency in it. That's not a hard thing to do. That's not an onerous thing to do. It's actually easier to show that than it is to drive a car. And a car is a lot less dangerous, but it is dangerous. And so we have licenses for cars. And similarly, we should have licenses for guns. If a person shows mental deficiency or mental derangement, they should not be allowed to have a gun. It's as simple as that. We can't just have, we should be able to have laws to not have, where kids can't have guns. 5-year-old, 6-year-old can't have a gun. Maybe some kids have guns in totally supervised situations, like at a firing range or something like that. Maybe inside the home when the parents are present. The parents can, school them in the uses of guns, or have a little shooting range in a basement, that kind of thing. But to just go outside and let your 8-year-old have a gun out in the public, that does not sound reasonable or even sane to me. I don't know about you, but that's how I feel about it. There should be laws, and so I'm on the control of them, taking them away. Why? That's silly. No, but they should be controlled. As for what type of weapon, I don't think that people should have howitzers, artillery, recoilless rifles, mortars. I would say that would not be good. I would say a 50 caliber machine gun. No, people should not have regular act. Not should have a 50 caliber machine gun at home. If they want to shoot one, they should go to a range that has them, and they're properly monitored and properly supervised. Because those are nasty weapons, good weapons, but nasty. Anyway, but this Second Amendment, this is the thing that is really going to screw up Trump, because the MAGA people, they follow the shall not be infringed part. They don't believe there should be any controls or infringement of usage of guns in any way, shape, or form. No training, no rules of use, nothing like that. They're just anybody wants a gun, should be total freedom to get it. No record tracking, nothing. That's what they believe. And Trump is threatening that. That's not going to be good for him. Well, anyway, that's where I stand on that. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Although this was live, I didn't have anybody visit me. But then again, I am new to this, and I've been told that this takes some time to get started, and so I just have to be patient, and so I'm patient. Anyway, if you see this will be on the internet, on YouTube. After I end it, it's just going to go right up on YouTube. If you see it on YouTube, drop me a line, make a comment, and tell me what you thought of it. If you think I could improve it somehow, let me know. But please be a bit kind, because I am starting off on this, and I'll fully admit I don't know entirely what I'm doing yet. It's a fascinating process. Anyway, take care, and we'll talk about a lot of other issues. I'm going to be talking soon about the upcoming November Senate elections and why I think there's going to be a huge move to the Democratic Party. I think the Democrats are going to pick up 58 seats. It's a plus 11. That's my prediction. We're going to go over why. I mean, I'm not just pulling that number out of the air or some other place. I've actually got logic and reason for every single state I'm picking, and Whether or not I'll get it right, I don't know. I would put my the 58 number. I'd put that at probably at about a 50 to 60% possibility. The number I had before was 56. I was predicting 56 a month or two ago. I now feel the 56 number is virtually a lock. I don't think the Democrats getting any lower than 56 seats. There's just too many things going against the Republicans on this one. And we'll talk about that in upcoming streams. Okay. Anyway, take care, and I will see you later.